I was able to follow most of the discussions because of Google Lens. You can see in any language, of course. I've tried to use DeepL for the speeches, but simultaneous translation is still a bit difficult for AI tools. And I will be as Dutch as possible. That means that sometimes I will talk about Sweden or other countries in a very blunt way. Because I've seen in the last 22 years when we founded Remit Consulting, a lot of stories and technology coming and going. And still we are here with Microsoft Excel. When we founded this company 22 years ago, we immediately had an office in London and Amsterdam because the founding partners were Andrew Waller and myself. Later on, we ended up with an office in Paris. We thought, okay, maybe 5 years this company will exist because everybody was on Excel in 2003. And we thought with our help as independent consultants, our clients or the potential clients would all go through a system in 5 years. It's now 22 years ago. Excel is still market leader. We're still here, which is good for the business, but actually it's a sad moment for the industry. Because if in 22 years, or even with Meta, 25 years or longer, you have so low innovation grade, you really wonder what's going on. So I will try to talk you a bit about what's happening in Europe, and also about the question, why don't we see all you people in Europe? That's the next one. So I already did something about Remit Consulting. I will go a bit through the European market and put it in perspective versus the Nordics. Of course, we have to talk a bit about political instability and the role of AI or technology in general in real estate investment or asset management, if you call it like that, property management, and some conclusions I've drawn myself. So this is a personal opinion. Like I said, we are founded in 2003. We are an independent consultancy company, and we love to work with you guys in Scandinavia, so we also have partners in the German-speaking regions. We ourselves have offices in the Netherlands, UK and France, and we're about technology. Remit originally stood for real estate management and IT. And we have a business model where we employ as little people as possible. That means there are some partners, some salary partners, and there's junior consultants, and in the middle we employ what we call associates. They're not employed, they're independent consultants, and they work with us on a project-by-project basis. So sometimes we say we can have 25 staff, sometimes we only have 4. Depends very much on the projects. We've worked all over Europe, mainly of course with local clients like in the UK, the Netherlands or France, but quite a lot of our clients are international investors, asset managers and property managers. And we still use this, let's say, fluid definition of fund and asset management, property management and facility management. And I'll get back to that later. So we do technology, business transformation and ESG, of course. And now, of course, it says AI, because that's the new word. ESG is out. AI is a new one. Like some of you might remember blockchain. We all went on the blockchain 10, 15 years ago. Nobody heard ever from that, but anyhow. We do some strategy, a lot of process work and technology. And we try to have this relationship with most of the European software companies in asset and property management. We have this love-hate relationship. They love us when we are involved because they can complain about our client. They always do stupid things. They don't have enough resources or they don't want to spend the money. The client always uses us to complain about the software supplier because technology is always to blame. So we're somewhere in the middle. You get a thick skin from that. Our clients say, well, we would like to have one neck to squeeze. My neck is quite thick, so they can squeeze what they like. I'm still there. So something about the European real estate market. What we see here is that, as you know, there has been some growth, but also some decline. I think in Sweden we have seen some growth in the real estate investment market. But in France and Germany it's really going down. It's really bad economy in France and Germany. And the UK, they had this stupid idea of this Brexit, which has led to quite an economic disaster, and which also had led to less investments. And we see in Europe a growth, but it's really, really limited. And it's also because in a number of countries, the political situation has led to uncertainty by foreign investors, like from the Middle East or from Asia, so they all withdrew. So for example, in the Dutch residential market, there's no foreign investor anymore, which was billions a couple of years ago. And then, of course, Dutch politicians say, well, to the pension funds, you have to invest only in Dutch residential, which is from a risk perspective, a very bad idea. So they won't. So we'll have a residential crisis, like probably you have here. Too much demand and no supply. And that's almost all over Europe. Because if we see, this is predictions by Savills and CBRE. And it's like asking, we have a Dutch saying, ask the butcher to test his own meat. If you ask a broker if the market's going up, it will go up. So we will find in 2-3 years what really happened. But we feel that as independent consultants, these kind of predictions are very positive. Which is logical. If you're a broker, you would like to have transactions. So, and this is partly, of course, a psychological game. If we all say there is a lot of transactions going on, we'll go run after the transactions. But we'll see. But it's quite big volumes. Germany is still the biggest one. France is compared to the number of inhabitants. Germany, for example, has 84 million inhabitants. In the UK, it's 70 million, so they're all below the number of inhabitants. In France, even worse. In France, there are 67 million inhabitants and only this investment volume in real estate. Well, the bloody Dutch are roughly around the same number as their inhabitants, so we're about 18.5. We're going to 20 million inhabitants, and we feel that's more or less equal. In Spain and Italy, of course, it's really bad because here there's 50 million inhabitants and only 18 billion in investments. And in Italy, it's even more inhabitants and lower investment volume. So you could also see this as a kind of maturity of markets. And we feel it would be in balance when it's roughly indicated by the number of inhabitants. So I think that's my first question. It's not. Is it going this way? The Mentimeter question. Yeah. So, how big is the combined investment volume for Sweden, Norway, and Finland together in euros, in billions? Oh, I know you're not on euros. I don't know for how long, but it's like to my UK colleagues, I always say, well, I don't know how long you will be driving on the wrong side of the road, using a funny money like pounds and a wrong clock. There's always time difference. I don't know about Sweden, but is it less than 20 billion? Because I read some very positive news about the real estate investment market. Well, you know your markets, I think. But it is here somewhere. Eh? compared to 21 million inhabitants. So it's okay, I think. Because sometimes we see, as let's say, people from the Central Europe or Northwestern Europe, Southwestern Europe, that Scandinavia should be much bigger market. But compared to the number of inhabitants, it's very normal. You have a big country, of course. I think it's the same size as Spain, but there's not so many people as in Spain. So this is what we see actually in the figures. This is nice if you're with about 10 million people. And do you really feel this growth the last couple of years? I just learned that there's 17,000 professional investors in real estate in Sweden. That's quite a big number. Compared to the Netherlands, we have about 50 with this total volume of investments. That's partly tax-driven, but partly also economies of scale. I'll get back to that later, because if there's no economies of scale, you won't have the money to invest in innovation and new technology. If you own 5 buildings, it's nice, it gets you a pension and so, but size does really matter, I think, to keep up with what's happening in the markets. Well, we probably have the same over here, I guess. Office and industrial growth, there is some growth, and the light industrial is getting better. But office, for example, we do in the UK research since COVID, since the pandemic, 21. Every month we measure in 14 cities in the UK the occupancy of offices. In the UK that's very easy because there is a concierge downstairs and he will just tick boxes how many people are there. Occupation just after COVID was 20% in the UK of offices. And that grew to the highest point last month, September. It's 39%. We publish this every month. We were very proud that, for example, some newspapers, including the Financial Times, took over our figures as a kind of measurement how well the office market in the UK is doing. Until somebody realized from the investors that the value of a building, of an office building, has something to do with the multiplier of the rental income. So if you have a big office, like in Canary Wharf, the office is half empty. So if you renew your rental contract, the value of the building goes down by 50%. So we got a request from the UK Investment Forum Association of the big investors that we might consider to give them the statistics before we publish it, as being independent and very small. We didn't do that. So they don't like us so much anymore. But it's true. And what you see, what's happening with empty offices, of course, all these small shops on the ground floor, they are going bankrupt because there's nobody buying coffee or a sandwich or whatever. So it's not very nice for the environment itself. So now government is trying to increase, but you have to lower rents, you have to change your offices. We ourselves are now moving from one building to the other. It's just one number, but this building has been completely renovated. It's really nice, with a gym and a barista. Of course, the barista should not be Dutch, but should be from Brazil. Otherwise, nobody comes to the office. There should be a gym, a bicycle storage, of course, for the bloody Dutchman. But offices really have a hard time. We see refurbishment to multi-tenant, of course, because which company is using a big office? Because nobody's going to the office. Industrial growth. Everybody was building, of course, these huge grey boxes along the highway for logistics. And as we discussed earlier, companies like Blackstone invested heavily in that. Before everybody knew it was a nice asset class, so now they're selling with a huge profit to the other fools who think that is still a nice profitable business. So real estate industry is really strange. Retail and hospitality, we see hotels and resorts are getting better. Retail, they face a lot of challenges, not only because of internet, but also because people are much more informed. I remember there was a huge shopping mall, and they had the idea, okay, we'll have a turnover rent, because if it's busy, we'll have a lot of money. But what turned out, the turnover was very low, and even lower than the normal rent if they would pay per square meter. And why was that? They found out that people went to the shopping mall because it was very busy, but nobody bought something. They just had a look at it, felt how it felt. And like IKEA probably now is also doing, smaller shops, people see the product and go online. But that's not the turnover in the shopping mall, so the rent was going like this. Now you have to pay to enter the shopping mall. Can you imagine? Because they think it's a showroom. Nobody's buying anything. You have to pay now to get in. Okay. It's changing, it's challenging. And we see this not only in the Netherlands, we also in Germany, in France. These factory outlets from MacArthur Glen or Westfield here in Stockholm. Turnover rent is so-so. It's quite a tricky investment. Residential is always doing nice because there's huge demand and hardly any supply. In the Netherlands, if you have an idea to build an apartment building, it will take you 7 years. I think in Sweden it's even longer. From planning and all kinds of people who are complaining about it and all kinds of rules and regulations. But if it's there, it's fully rented. It's also nice to see all kinds of technology around that. People are trying to please tenants, but you don't need to please tenants. They will be there anyway. If you put a sign up here, I'll build here an apartment block and it's ready in 6 months, I don't know, but people will sleep in their sleeping bag in front of it to get it. So technology is everything, but the margins are still so high in real estate that the need to innovate is relatively limited. What we see is also a change in the major players and stakeholders. We used to have a lot of institutional investors. There are partly replaced by private equity. Huge companies with big pockets, deep pockets, and willing to pay quite a lot of money in all kinds of markets where institutional investment will think, well, a lot of uncertainty, short-term profit, not long-term investment, but they're getting there. We also see a lot of real estate developers getting into problems because they're developing an office block and by the time it's finished, it's only half rented. And the banks get a bit nervous because the whole system was built on, okay, I have an idea, I'll have an architect draw a nice office block. I'll go to one of the big four. They will rent it for 20 years. With the rental contract, I'll go to a German institutional investor, preferably a German one. And I will sell it to the Germans. And then I start building. But if there's no big rental contract for 20 years, there's no financing for long term. So the real estate developers have a very hard time. In Germany now, they have asked for a subsidy, the developers as a group, from the German government of 50 billion euro. That's 500 billion krona, roughly. Because he said, what do you want as a municipality and a state? Half empty or half built offices, or shall we finish it? It doesn't look really nice, of course, half built offices and other real estate. So it's a problem. Financial institutions like banks, they used to fund a lot of real estate. What we now see is that the bigger banks are very reluctant to finance property development, but even property investment. So we see crowdfunding coming up. We see smaller family offices putting money in it because it's still a nice return, but there is some risk, of course. And in most of the countries, the government is, virtually non-existing. There's a government, like in France or the Netherlands or Germany, but they can't do anything, actually. Instead of this idea of we'll work together, they now are opposites. So they will fight on anything. So there will be hardly any investments. This doesn't help the European market. So like I already said, quite a lot of foreign investors, so non-European investors, withdrew from the European markets because of uncertainty. They're now coming back a bit, especially from the guys from Asia, from Singapore and that state wealth funds and so, because they now see opportunities to buy office portfolios for relatively low prices. What's happening in the US? They also see some opportunities, but they're also selling quite a lot because they were already in the markets in Europe, and now they're selling at least to get some advantage. We still see, like I said, Germany and France as main investors in Europe, but the instability is also for them a big thing. Nobody knows what's going to happen in France. Some say the situation is worse than in Greece. So the European Union has to print a lot of money to save the French. But of course, the Germans are more or less saved by the industry for the war, the weapon industry, because they missed something out on the car manufacturing thing. But that affects quite a lot of other countries. Our country doesn't even have a government. Yeah, we had a few the last couple of years. We're now in the statistics of Colombia or Italy or so. They will last 6 months or 7 months. I mean, it's a complete scrambles. And the funny thing is, in Eastern Europe, actually, and I don't want to say this in public, but with a mild form of dictatorship, as an investor, it's a rather stable environment, which is not very nice from another perspective, but from a financial perspective, okay. It's very stable. They will do actually what they tell the people, so we'll see where it goes in Hungary or in Poland. I already told you something about this impact of this of these trends on the investment appetite. And yeah, well, we've seen, of course, the Brexit guys. Well, only half the population, of course, voted for Brexit, but it's the same with Trump, isn't it? It's only half of them. And the problem is, of course, they take all. So this whole Brexit thing is really influencing in a negative way the investment opportunities. We see also regional political tensions. Even in a small country like the Netherlands, where we live below sea level, we always had a kind of model, we call the polar model, where you negotiate any deal. So we don't go right, we don't go left, we always go somewhere in the middle. But now this is changing rapidly. And for example, the Dutch government, who was in place till a few months ago, suddenly announced that as a property owner, even as a private individual, you had to pay a tax on a return of 7%. But nobody made a 7%. But they said, well, you just pay over 7% income tax, which is 49%. So a lot of people start selling. Individuals, wealthy individuals, start selling for ridiculous prices, to be honest, because there's no supply and a lot of demand. So, and this gives also, there's protests and demonstrations the last couple of months, because people who start to live on their own, there's nothing available. There's no rental, there's no social housing being developed, because the government more or less limited that. The previous government limited that. Private housing schemes are very expensive because there's a lot of demand and no supply. And to buy a house in the Netherlands, you could have a mortgage of 110% because the value is going up like that. The European Union said to the Dutch government, people have too much loans on their balance sheet, so you have to go down. You have to bring your own money. Nobody has own money in the Netherlands. Only your parents have money. So everybody now tries to get money from their parents. Their parents would like to do that, but they live in a big house and they have no mortgage anymore. But where should they go? There is no senior housing or flats being built. So the whole system has come to a standstill and nobody knows how to solve this. And every idea is a good idea, but they don't dare to implement it. It's short-term politics versus long-term problems. It's the same with healthcare or education. So what you see is that, are there some exceptions to the rule in positive sense? That is, of course, diversification is one of the strategies for an investor to get involved in. Due diligence is very important. We still see people buying portfolios without a real due diligence. So they find out afterwards that maybe the portfolio was not so nice or the tenants were not so good or et cetera, et cetera. And here, of course, technology helps. And also, some of the investors have now this different strategy, which is space as a service. So they don't want to build an apartment block and rent it out or sell it out. They would like to offer all kinds of services to that. And an example is Greystar, an American company who now manages 1 million units all over the world. Space as a service. They don't use normal property management systems. They use Salesforce because they say, well, we are in CRM. We're not in real estate, which is interesting, I think. Short about AI. Of course, this is an overview of the PropTech map of a month ago or so. So there's hundreds of companies involved in all kinds of processes. Some of them are also active probably here in Sweden. But what's the real issue? It's of course the quality of the data and the standardization as discussed by you. There's no standard. And transparency in real estate is always very difficult because I want to know everything about your portfolio, but I won't share the data on my portfolio. So everybody's in favor of standardization, but not with my portfolio. That is still to be solved, isn't it? We see quite a lot of AI tools being developed for data pattern recognition. A lot of data you can quite easily analyze. The same with automated valuation, of course. Predictive modeling, predictive maintenance we see. It's all about the data and no standard. It's apples and pears and pineapples and bananas. And if we go to the property management bit, somebody is mentioning the Edge building of Deloitte in Amsterdam. For your information, it's already 10 years old. Eh? 2014. Exactly. So Edge, the developer, was not called Edge. It's now called Edge Technologies. It's a developer. But you don't think they're a developer. They are developing buildings with, like the Edge, 28,000 sensors. So what happens with the Edge is that if you want to go to the office, you have to tell your app, and it will tell you whether you're welcome or not, because there's not too many spaces. It will tell you how to go to the office, by car, by bicycle, by train, because of the traffic jams, etc. It will tell you where you will sit in the building, and what kind of coffee you like. And in the end of the day, they will tell the system will tell the cleaners that you don't have to clean floor 7, 8, and 9 because there was nobody there today. So the building is more or less directing the people Now, after 10 years, not everybody's very happy with it, but that's a a detail, not a detail. So there's a lot of things to do with cost and energy, on energy, but also predictive maintenance. And we see that the buildings are getting more clever. And is that machine learning or AI? I'm not sure. It's all about efficiency, isn't it? Morgan Stanley says AI can automate 37% of tasks in real estate, 34 billion US in worth. We will see. Because we have all, I'm sure you all have these applications maybe on your phone if you live in an apartment building or in a community where you can tell the app that the lights are off or something is wrong with your heating or whatever. But what we see now this year, in which business process AI can function as an additional resource. We see with acquisition and divestments, we just delivered a 2-page prompt to ChatGPT 5.0, where it would say, okay, is this investment proposal? You upload that. Is this something which would fit in our portfolio? And within a few minutes, it will produce a 3-page PDF where it says it does fit or it doesn't fit, based on what kind of yield you would like, what kind of ESG levels, etc., etc. Some analysts get a bit nervous of this, but you really have to be careful by interpreting this. This is, of course, very easy with AI. A lot of data, a lot of documents, supplier contracts, and record to report. Reporting, anyhow, is a bit more easy using some AI. Last week I was in Munich at the Oktoberfest. I was also at the Oktoberfest, yeah, of course. The last evening Oktoberfest, and next day Expo Real starts. Europe's largest real estate conference, 42,000 people. And the question is, how many people from Sweden were there? How many companies were there? It's 42,000 people, 5,000 from the Netherlands. So, you see the trend. It's actually 10, of which half of them were municipalities from Sweden. And my question is really, what's wrong? Because when I was younger, we saw quite a lot of money coming from the Nordics, especially Sweden, investing in Dutch real estate and German real estate, but they all went back. Of course, there was some bad experiences, but they never came back to the Netherlands. Why? Yeah, probably. So I'll come to the conclusion then. Market is changing. Long term becomes a bit mid-term. Flexibility is very important. And I would like to advise you to invest more in the rest of Europe and expand your services and software into Europe. Become a major European player. Because I think from a business cultural point of view, you're very close to Germany, the Netherlands, France. So the markets are waiting for new players. And one last word on the international software survey you did, on the Swedish software survey you did. I found in that list, as far as I could follow, 5 international companies. One is Momentum, which is owned by Arion, which is German, which is now TPG, a private equity firm. The other one is Planon, which is facility management. It's now owned by Schneider Electric from France. Spacewell, which used to be Axerion, which is now bought by a German private equity firm. And Unitform and Visma, which are still Scandinavian, I think. The rest is local players. I predict in 5 years there will be 5 left and not 300. Because those software companies cannot cope with the new questions the bigger investors will have. So, and with that kind of scary message, I thank you for your attention.